Hi, I'm John Moulis and welcome to another in my series of videos about my time at the Department of Finance in Canberra and about bullying and harassment in the public service. You really can't I don't think bullying and harassment comes close to what I experienced at the Department of Finance. It was more like mental terrorism. It was a form of terrorism, really, But in 1982, early 1982, it hadn't reached that stage yet. It hadn't reached the fanatical, witch-burning level that it had in my latter years at the Department of Finance. And those latter years were just around the corner. Now, in March 1982, they moved me against my will back into office services, and I was the head of stores in office services, and I was distributing stores to people and talking to them over the counter in the storeroom and everything like that. Things were going really well. I mean, the seating pattern was I was in the corner of the office, and the guy above me, Harry Brown, was next to me, and the travel officer was in the other corner. The OIC, who by that stage was Ron Axelby, he was in the other corner. And things were going fairly well. Perhaps too well. And I thought, this can't last. That the bosses here are going to do something to sabotage my time in this job. And yes, they went and did that. What happened? They went and moved a fella named Cole Nidri from estimates and accounts into office services. Now, this bloke had nothing to do with us. He was involved in estimates, which were budget estimates, which were, budget estimates in three or 4 years down the track. It was an economic thing, but it came under management services, and we were there in office services. We were, servicing other officers in the department with stationery and pens and paper and printing and photocopying and that sort of thing. So they went and moved this guy into the office, and they said that he had to sit in my position in the corner of the office, and I had to move into the middle of the office, right in line with the front door where people walked in. Now, this guy, Cole Nidri, was a chain smoker. He smoked continuously, and I was getting his cigarette smoke all the time, and I hated that. I mean, I had to put up with cigarette smoke all the time at home with my parents, and my sister smoked as well, my brother smoked as well. I mean, I was involved in health and fitness at the time. The last thing, I was going to the gym and everything like that and swimming. The last thing I wanted was to breathe in cigarette smoke. And in 1982, the effects of cigarette smoke causing lung cancer and other diseases were already well known. But, he was there smoking all the time. I mean, anyway, and I had to be put there in the middle of the office in line with the door. So everybody who came into the office came straight to my desk. And I kept on saying, look, go to the officer in charge in the corner. I have nothing to do with this. And it became the most annoying thing out, and my attitude had changed, because I knew that they had brought this guy in, Cole Nidri, to sabotage my time in office services. So I was called into the director's office there with the director. I think his name was Fitzpatrick. I'm not sure. Martin Fitzpatrick, I think his name was. And he said to me, oh, you're not doing very well in office services. We've had complaints, this sort of thing. And I said to him, look, what do you expect? I mean, I was doing really well in there. You went and brought in Cole Nidri. I have to put up with cigarette smoke all the time. I have to put up with people coming in asking really complicated things which I know nothing about and everything. And this was, this cavalier attitude that I had encountered in the accounting office he said it himself, you know, my complaints were completely ignored, brushed aside. You know, he had the audacity to say to me, he said, the cigarette smoke, that's pie in the sky. So me complaining about cigarette smoke and the effects on my health, that was pie in the sky, according to this bloke, this director. Oh, look, you know, that was when I began getting really disillusioned about the bosses at finance, thinking that you know, they were there just totally negative, hostile to me, that I wasn't getting a fair go at all, and because the reaction had been the same with all the complaints and everything, and all of the negativity and everything, because the bosses at finance, I mean, they harboured a grudge against the director of the accounting office because of me having my appointment confirmed, that stuff up which I told you about at my 12-month probation period, which resulted in me having my appointment confirmed. I mean, the bosses at finance never forgave the leadership there at the accounting office for letting my confirmation slip through. I mean, they all thought that I should have had my appointment annulled. But anyway, so what happened is I went back to office services, and Ron Axelby said that I was going back into the print room, into the reproduction room. And like I said, I had told them that I didn't want to go back in there. But they went and put me back in there. So there I was in the job I was in when I started in the Department of Finance the day after I left school. Oh, you know, and by this stage, there was a new supervisor in the print room. His name was Jim Tuckerman. And this guy was a real bastard. He was a real ocker, he used to drink all the time. I mean, he had gout and all that sort of thing. I mean, and he had the bosses around his figure. I mean, he used to crawl to the bosses. He was playing the public service game all the time. I mean, I called him a spineless bastard once because he was a spineless bastard. Never once did he stand up for me. Never once did he defend me. When the complaints went in, he didn't defend me at all. In fact, he was part of the complaint process, because every time someone complained against me in that office, where I stayed until I left the Department of Finance, every time somebody put in a complaint, they would nominate Jim Tuckerman as a witness. And Jim Tuckerman gladly was a witness. I mean, he testified against me all the time. In fact, there were a couple of occasions where Jim Tuckerman himself put in formal complaints against me. Oh, you know, it was just awful. But it hadn't really come to the really bad period by that stage. I mean, 1982, end of 1982, I went into another sort of depressive period, not as intense as 1981, but, you know, I could tell that something wasn't quite right here. But I didn't, like I said, I didn't really think much about it. I thought other people were going through this as well. I didn't think it was anything peculiar to me. You know, I thought that this was a normal thing that people went through. You know, you went through a good period, you felt really good for a few days, and then you went into this depressive period, and I didn't think anything about it. I mean, I hadn't even heard of manic depression or bipolar or anything like that. But anyway, you know, 1982, end of 1982 came, and I started thinking about holidays, different holidays. I mean, I had used up my leave up until then with weekends in Sydney. I'd have the Monday, I'd go up for the weekend and I'd have the Monday off, and I'd come back on the Tuesday, and that was it. I'd do that every few weeks, every month or so, and I'd use up my leave that way. But at the end of 1982, I thought, well, you know, I might as well broaden my horizon. I mean, at that stage, I hadn't been out of New South Wales or the ACT. I mean, the furthest north I'd ever been was Port Macquarie, when I went on holidays with my family up there to the north coast. You know, in 1970, when I was 10, January, my parents drove me up to Port Macquarie, and we were up in Port Macquarie, but that was as far north as I'd ever been. So I thought, you know, well, I'll go to Queensland, you know, and this coincided with a period where it was before deregulation of the financial sector, and I was with a building society called Canberra Building Society, Canberra Permanent Building Society, and loan provisions at that stage were very tight indeed, and the building society only gave loans to buy houses. I mean, that's what it was called, a building society, and they only gave home loans and business loans as well to build new premises, but that was it. And I was told about credit unions, which had really liberal attitudes towards issuing loans. You could get an unsecured loan for anything at a credit union. So I transferred my payroll deduction to the PA credit union. And being in the public service, you know, and working in registry with files and everything, the term PA meant put away. You know, one of the action officers, if they wanted the file to be put back into the stacks, he'd put on the thing PA, meaning put away. And in registry, you'd look at this and you'd take it into the stacks and put it away. But I didn't know that PA credit union, in that instance, the PA stood for Police Association, and it was the Police Association's credit union, but they were allowed to have members from outside the police force, that the people in the Canberra community could join up the PA credit union. And I wasn't upset when I found out that the PA stood for Police Association. In fact, I was quite pleased, because I thought, well, you know, a credit union run by police, I mean, my money would be more secure there. And so anyway, end of 1982, I thought, well, I'll go for holiday in Queensland. And, you know, and I had no money of my own. I mean, all the money had gone. I mean, every payday I used to go to Impact Records in Canberra and just buy all of these import albums, you know, and the other money, when I wasn't buying albums, I was spending the money on supplements for the gym, you know, and these were expensive as well. And so I had no money at all in the bank, and so I went for a loan. And I thought it was great. I mean, I asked for a loan of, I think, $2,000. I'm not really sure that first loan, and I was granted it, an unsecured loan. And the arrangement was that $150 was deducted from my salary every fortnight as the repayment, and it would go until the money was repaid, including interest as well. And so I thought that was a great arrangement, because I really had no expenses at that stage. No other expenses at that stage. I mean, I didn't have a family. I wasn't paying high rents. I mean, I was paying board to my parents, and that wasn't much. And $150 was about half of my salary, if I remember correctly, and half of my fortnightly paycheck, and that came out. And it came out fairly painlessly, because I didn't see the money. I mean, it wasn't as if I was handing over banknotes over the counter. So it seemed fairly painless to start with. So anyway, in January that year, I went up to Noosa, because I was told, you know, Noosa was the place to go to. And it was really great. I loved it. And then I went to Surfers Paradise. And that was really good too. I mean, I can remember on the coach, because I didn't have a car, and I didn't even have a driver's license. I remember on the coach, heading north, and thinking, you know, as soon as I got to Port Macquarie, and I started going past Port Macquarie, I remember thinking just how great this was, that this was uncharted territory. I'd never been this far north before. And I just kept going further north, and, you know, all of these towns I'd ever looked at, I'd ever seen in an atlas, you know, as you know, words in an atlas and on a map, you know, I was driving through, and it was great. And so anyway, and we got up to Surfers Paradise, and the bus driver was a Queenslander, and he said, you know, because it was daylight saving was on at the time, and he said, we're on real time here in Queensland, so turn your clock back an hour. And we all thought that was funny, so we were up there in Brisbane, and then I went up to Noosa and everything else. And then something happened on that first day I was in Brisbane that was to change the rest of my time at Department of Finance. There was a cabinet meeting in Brisbane on that day, and there was speculation, leadership speculation about the Labor Party. Bill Hayden was the leader of the Labor Party, the opposition party, but most people wanted Bob Hawke to be the leader of the Labor Party and to be Prime Minister. And at the same time, Malcolm Fraser was the Prime Minister, a Liberal leader, and he was deeply unpopular. Most people wanted Andrew Peacock to be Liberal leader. So anyway, there was a cabinet meeting on that day, and that day coincided with the release of an opinion poll, a new opinion poll, which showed Bill Hayden's popularity at rock bottom level. It was terrible. And what had happened is that on that day, as I was taking the coach from Brisbane up to Noosa, I heard it on the radio in the coach. They had the radio on, and I saw it on the TV news in my motel room in Noosa that night, that what had happened is that the Labor Party had dumped Bill Hayden as leader, and Bob Hawke was the new leader. But at the same time, Malcolm Fraser had gone to Government House and had called an election. Now, 1983 was an election year, but the election wasn't supposed to be held until October or November that year. But Malcolm Fraser called an early election, which meant that it was going to be Fraser against Hawke. And it was no contest. I mean, everybody knew that Bob Hawke was going to win. But that was the incident which changed the whole course of history and my time at Department of Finance, because it was known at the time that I was a Liberal supporter, and I began writing letters to the Australian supporting the Liberal Party and criticising the Hawke government and everything after the Hawke government came to office in, I think it was 5th of March 1983, and it just changed the whole dynamic of working there in the Department of Finance. In addition to the security guards, this was another wild card which was thrown into the mix as well, which changed everything. Anyway, I had my holiday up there in Noosa and Surfers Paradise, and I came back to Department of Finance expecting things to be different, because, you know, by this stage the complaints against me had started up, and Jim Tuckerman was stoking the fire, the supervisor in the print room. And I came back expecting things to be different, that I was away from the department for a few weeks and I'd come back and have a fresh start. But no, nothing had changed. In fact, things got a hell of a lot worse after that time. And things became more and more uncomfortable, and that was the beginning of the end. Anyway, this is about it for this video. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.